exception after the chaos and search for a strong continuing to wander and see this freedom to tame the squad we see a small outside of a sort of calling enters we explore what our doors and realize desire to accomplish which is a I feel like why they have the ability to see using these cases, serving as a way to allow ourselves to prevent not just from the table to show the deadliness and strength, not only within the environment, not only within detail and also empty space in the room. There's also a lot of creative potential when they are to keep our environment inside of us to prevent us to allow you to some things last while there are rooms that exist. Far more serving as a two-way hallway. Servers with electrical two-shot as just appears as with their version of such a backup specialized might house the room that houses a server itself. And now, yet the in addition, there would be a small room with access fuse boxes, this room would be the room would be the window message and making it possible, yet hard to see. Now here is where we get to where I believe this room should show on the lead. Many days have questions about across the facility, giving the sense that all the electronics and slightly outdated containment with one yet as the bodies tell them to be strong to give up information. All of these personnel are so fun to have to showing the heads of their panic, interest control, and realized as an ideas I don't believe this is what everyone was under the head, which is why I have scientists are would serve a quarter of this room, hiding their faces, isolation use will require containment space between them. This should give more variety and video step and encouragement. Now, it's time to shine a little light. What means is I have a idea, but just four-way could actually vastly, which is why I think the head should use it as an unhouse that is randomly temporarily first side of the head given by chance understands a stellar the construction creed. Lastly, an established child. Anyways, this would show up the rings, passes, video, and it's each room to itself, being a hard task to work on. This room would have the greatest hybrid environment just to similar. Holding the stall would have the but once you hold right-click, the GOC's turn themselves would be in space, would be presented to everything. This would serve to give roles some sort of SCP that's completely overhauled like containing granted, as well as adding to how to install SCP-1 teams and the over-reliance. The SCP would be sent to this is why the role we highlighted the problems of SCP-19 as being the only reason to keep the opportunity to one of the few only ways to get goggles to work are similarly to every other way more facility depends on a limited resource, making SCP-19 a hot unique interaction with SCP. You unlock this by adding other rooms with importance and having other loot to grab and obtain to progress to make it not incredible second item. The spotlight was taken off the outskirts of light containing a teddy bear that heals the injured, making SCP-914 imagine the goggles would have a vision in something potentially harder to come across. As players will be disincentivized from hugging the right or left wall and progressing towards the middle map. The severed hand will find in a couple searches, hope to add a new objective to containment, giving more loot to the other teddy bears to return to the facility. This resource also serves to last longer than many of the SCPs will run adding much larger depth and variety to how people get surgery. Well, And lastly, as a cherry on top, we will remodel SCP-914 slightly to reinforce the room's ability to upgrade items and make it harder to be a room to just camp and hide in. This grants this fixed light and add enough variety to how people could use this generating. Even though I think this is up to the viewer in Northwood, there is still so much potential to add level higher experts to the facility, like facility guard has a limited amount of hitting, as well as discussion on what supplies that require the substance should contain. Northwood has said that they would touch on the overall shoddy on 914 and experiment with adding other key cards that can be obtained throughout life, dipped their toes in the water, and then ran in the opposite direction while surface action cards fell from their pot temporarily vulnerable. I think there is so much more that could be looked into, and even outside of the rooms I described, and within them, there could be added key cards.
The item is not vision, inventory, and the user is secure, leaving the item on the floor. The item can be shot to break the 10 seconds, rendering it as a useless item that should fall around. Lastly, the third item this role has a chance of getting is a syringe of during this recharge state. Otherwise, the item would just be and you reimagining them how damage without the because you know these are living just ideas.
Next, we have the font.
Am I trying to get the exact idea?
Serving as another
small
digital fix if you attack an insert
it into
I
a
covered just a bit quickly to resolve every issue I address in the video, and it would these pockets of light are no longer the main point of being implanted on the majority of automation. It would prevent their volume and by using any SCP-914 is no longer the only valuable thing in entertainment, and there is a path to escape outside of SCP-914 that exists in light that also opens up the door to just much more interactions within the facility. SCP-9 couldn't use so with all this information. You decide is this exactly where time the existing implanter would end in entering 3 series that was also good. Granting was this a breath of fresh air contrasting to the so far addition SCPs would also be able to add video and did a disservice to the rest of the planet's offability. Did all my videos stop and this was of no surprise. Completely new challenge by channel a bottom of the barrel trash factory. This would serve without effective and this was just more sludge to get strategies, but do it with all your heart and in all seriousness, I definitely had more ideas, new scenarios, and would still take 100%. The last thing I want to do is have a lot of needless flavor to my video. We are trying to dig through the entire scenario. There's so much more to be expressed regarding SCP and causing different interactions. So, for example, even in containment, this can make us and also not even themselves, but just the mere existence of SCPs. On the third hit, 30 HP would be dealt to the SCP ways to contain SCPs. After this counterattack, this suit of armor would go on to include these unique items that help us temporarily. She found ourselves at the end of this journey. During this recharge stage, it just contains the room for new. In all honesty, people like strategy was as hard to reach. Just have as it initially appeared. I go through the exact process. I make you feel something. Watch my video, not least learning exactly what light is and it is a war. What the problems are. Each role figuring out rooms to remove these requires mastery want this knowledge of how all they see is more detail before I go to the conclusion. Usually with these videos I have a couple of conceptually the exact opposite of the same, but when you learn what content should be added to the zones, and that it opens up the floodgates for many ideas that spawns them so I encourage anyone who starts to specialize these and go through this thought process. Calling these ideas the Annihilator is equipped with a machine. This was a fun case to the FMG, and I'm happy to search precise way. It's strong one door and obviously another door closes to be more with the idea that these factions challenge so much for watching. And I hope you have enjoyed my videos as much as I have this every role to do small until next time. Good morning, short evening, tonight, or whatever time you're watching this, I don't even know. The chance to have a heavy flip side, almost polar opposite to the machine gun. Damage inputs would be large, but between shots, there would be a noticeable delay.
The ratio of updates that
as the one and only special item the Annihilator would hold, a pistol and tablet.
or 6 to
How was this used so? At the end of the day, this was an interesting
and
Well,
look, the pistol holds only one shot, and instead of normal ammunition, is that a GPS start my idea in the chamber just shut down the concept of once the gun is shot, and no longer has this ammunition. The player would focus on being the tablet, or could be used as structure on which the tablet would give you a small proximity around you, at the end, and a red dot would be where the dart has hit here. I want to really solidify the fact to shoot an SCP, which I don't consider myself periodically showing the direction they are invaluable regards to you. It doesn't take a lot to do what I did finish back in. I'm not smart. If the SCP has to travel through an elevator and take time to imagine would show the last location how the SCP was in. Being smart has the elevator there travel anything to do with this. This tracker would be enabled for quite a bit of time. The only way for it to be disabled do either being on my battery and I even encourage people watching to do such if they've been thinking of their SCP teammates holding themselves back.
I know there is a better way.
I certainly wouldn't complain. I don't own the idea of making suggestions and new ideas, and it's not like I'd accuse someone of stealing my format, especially when it's something so simple, like accusing people of stealing detailed subtitles doesn't have to be added exactly how I described it. That's it for this video.
I
hope you enjoyed watching. Have a good day. Really, it's all up to you. Until next time, see you on the imagination. I wanted to provide a bunch of ideas that I think could work in actual gameplay, but at the very least would just spark discussion about the idea of their existence and at the chance of getting something new and unique like them added to the game. If you don't like an item and think it's completely broken, my wish is for you to just reimagine it, or take what the main concept of the item is and see if it could be remade into something else that would actually work. At the end of the day, I'm not an expert and I'm not a god. I can't create something that's perfect every single time with 100% accuracy. I just want to pitch new things that will spice up gameplay and action. But now, let's get into explaining all of what we did. We added a class into the game that completely specializes in the containment of SCPs, with their weakness being the limited versatility in dealing with human classes. A completely new challenge for all classes within the facility, and a completely new way to play the game that will cause a lot of new gameplay strategies and tactics. Rounds will be diversified and changed, new scenarios and emerging situations unfolding. Completely new counters to SCPs and items will be added, allowing for more variety in loadouts, what items you prioritize and use, etc., etc. New weapons will be added to master and learn how to counter and predict. Lastly, SCPs will have a new challenge. If they've had a really good game, in comes a new class that will make them have to lock in and put a foot up to keep winning.
And to hold some other unique factors, such as the horror, but, something else. Now, I want to start this off by saying Northwood still does a lot of amazing updates, and I'm not trying to take away
at the end of the day, this was an interesting and unique look into the idea of GOC. Anyway, we found ourselves at the end of the video. A little treat to all of you who have watched this far. This isn't a one-off episode. I have a very loved faction planned for the next video. Yet now, I must go. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And until next time, see you on the flip side.
That would change the boring, empty, and bleak surface that we all know into something more flavorful and enjoyable was never completed. Instead of that, they made this beautiful frog from SCP-244 into this bloody trash. Okay, obviously I don't care that much about the change, but I hope everyone sees where I'm coming from. Northwood should be devoting some amount of time into creating big updates that fix big problems with the game, because at the end of the day they will be way worth it and beneficial. Well, why don't I put my money where my mouth is? What are some suggestions / updates I have for Northwood that they should be spending their time on? Optimization. Redesigning Nuke Room so it isn't as easily campable. The nuke room is designed almost as if the developers wanted to make the room as campable as possible. The campers have windows that allow them to peek out and shoot, as well as hide behind for cover. There is a room behind that has a door for cover of gunfire and has utilities such as grenades, ammunition, and guns, as well as possible throwables. This is while perpetrators have to exit a small elevator door, serving as a funnel for the campers to easily shoot at. Perpetrators also have to run along a long path that provides no cover for gunfire before they can reach the campers. The elevator provides little protection to gunfire and no protection to grenades. While I think it is a fun circumstance to be holding the nuke room, I feel the odds are unfairly warranted to the camper until they run out of supplies, which they usually never do, as each person coming to kill them just functions as a supply crate. I think there needs to be something to a little more fairly put some odds into the perpetrator. More horror. Like I've already stated, this game could go with some updates expanding upon the horror, so it isn't overridden by everything else in the game. I've made a series of possible things to make the game hold more horror elements or be more action-packed to have an unnerving feel, so you can look for there for some of my ideas. A lot of it's background stuff and a lot of it's foreground stuff, so there's a bunch of different ideas that you, as well as in Northwood, could take better atmosphere. Something that this game doesn't have is a lot of immersion, especially due to the fact that the lighting update made all the textures flat and repetitive, contrasting when they used to pop and felt more three-dimensional. Now, Northwood did take a step to one-up the atmosphere they had by changing the door sounds, but I actually think in many ways these changes were bad. I don't mind most of the regular doors, but the sounds of gates and checkpoints are obnoxious and not easy to tune out. What I love about the old ones was that they were easy to ignore when needed, but when paying attention stuck out like a sore thumb. Now, paying attention or not, you will hear them, which I dislike. Although, these changes ultimately will be an insignificant step in the right direction if Northwood doesn't continue to build on to it or add anything else. Still, a step in the right direction, which I applaud Northwood for. Surface update. The surface is dull, boring, and also a containment breach asset. Anything to spice it up, give it more content, more flavor, would be better than what we have now, giving facility guards a clear objective. Well, let's start this off by saying that facility guards were created with no thought of who would be playing the class. The sole purpose of the creation of the facility guards was to be something else for the SCPs to kill other than D-Class and scientists, and also so the D-Class didn't have an easy direct shot towards the surface. And I think that really shows. D-Class spawn and immediately know they need to get loop, get a keycard, and escape. Same thing for scientists. Military classes need to kill the opposing team, aid their team in escaping, and kill the SCPs. This leaves the facility guard, which just kinda has to wander around until they're given something to do, like assist a scientist escaping, terminating a D-Class, or attacking an SCP. Another thing to note is the objectives of every class except facility guard always have an end goal. Such as D-Class, their end goal is to escape. Now, as a D-Class, you can take 40 minutes to escape. You can do whatever you want as long as you get to that one goal. The same thing goes for military. You have a couple of side quests, but your main goal is to kill SCPs and get rid of any malicious forces in the facility, taking control of it, such as Chaos and D-Class. That is your main goal. Anywhere to get to there is fine. Now, this goes to facility guards where it's just a bunch of side quests. There is no end goal, which is the lack of purpose that they have. Fixing SCP-096. I've already made videos about this, but let's just say SCP-096 isn't properly given his role in the SCP team. SCP-096 is built from the ground up to be able to handle multiple people, but then the numbers are put in, so SCP-096 is punished harshly when he tries to attack players the few opportunities he is given. Fixing the FRMG-0. Well, I think there are plenty of videos on this, But I have my own separate problem. Where I personally think the FRMG gets overpowered is its versatility. I'll explain it by comparing it to the Logiseur. The Logiseur is balanced in the way that with its attachments, you can only accomplish one of two things: a gun that is very fit for long ranges, but not close ranges, or a gun that is the opposite, fit for close ranges, but not for long ranges. This makes sense due to the fact that the Logiseur would be pretty overpowered to be a gun that does it all. It has fast fire rate, lots of damage, and this would just add another thing, which is you can shoot from a very generous window of ranges. Now you have the FRMG Zero. The same idea, but with the FRMG Zero, you are able to make a build that supports both long and short ranges. Now, this is due to the fact that, to stay in theme with the MTF's guns, Northwood decided to give the gun a load of attachments and customizability, which can widely modify the gun, which I just think for this large machine gun shouldn't be the case. I think you should be very limited in what you can do with it, especially for a machine gun. This versatility makes it so the gun has everything: the damage, the fire rate, the ammo capacity, the range. It removes the need for other guns, because there are really no weaknesses you need to cover up except for the fact that it's not an insta-kill. More animations. Now, this is a personal thing that I desire, and haven't heard anybody else request, but definitely think would add another level of strategy and immersion into the game. Animations that sync up for other players, such as getting ready to throw an item, SCP-018, grenade or flashbang, inspecting weapons, drawing and reloading weapons. They have those, but they can be improved. They aren't exactly the best. Equipping the hat, and really just any interaction with any item. When I say sync up, I mean that a lot of animations are only visual for the player using the item, like pulling the pin to a grenade, and they should add an animation to the player model so other players can visually see the other player interacting with the item. Better balancing. More on this later, and I think this is also kind of just obvious. Make a tutorial. An in-game tutorial for the game that provides basic necessities players need to understand to be able to play the game, as well as the function of SCP items would be beneficial and helpful to Northwood's player base. It would also increase it, because I know a lot of people leave because they just don't understand what they're doing, and there's no tutorial, except an outdated one in Polish. Making the operational guide an actual guide. Naming it the operational guide leads me to believe it is supposed to be a manual that the player can look to when they are confused with mechanics of the game, which will help inform the player of something's mechanic or purpose. Yet, this isn't what the operational guide is, instead being a book of lore. If the purpose of the operational guide is to just be a book of lore, then I guess the developers succeed, but in that case, I would suggest renaming it so it isn't as confusing to new players. Making the operational guide accessible to in-game spectators. A great way to kill a spectator's time as a new player would be to be able to read the operational guide and consume information on how the game functions and mechanics of certain things. Of course, if the developers just actually want the operational guide to not be a guide, adding it to the spectator menu will still prove to be beneficial if people want to kill spectator time at reading up on it. Winning conditions. I do think it is a genuine problem worth addressing, when it is a completely valid and executable strategy to spend the first 15 minutes of the game camping in 914, upgrading items more and more, completely avoiding any conflict and level of difficulty, all to just be able to, at the end of the game, come out on top and kill everybody. If there is no SCP-079 or SCP-106, the SCPs are incapable of doing anything. Anyways, I listed 14 things that would probably take a lot of work and dedication, but in the end would be worth it for the end result. Of course, there are definitely more things that Northwood can do. If you have any ideas, feel free to comment them. These are just the only ones I thought of as of now. And I just want to state this because I might have been a little misleading with this, but the joke items are not the thing I am complaining about. I could care less if Northwood decided every update that they wanted to add a joke item. What I care about is that Northwood is not spending their time or some of their time making these really good updates or fixing these problems that have been asked for by the community. The fact that Northwood is spending some of their time to create these joke items instead of these really good updates is just kind of salt in the wounds, no matter how minuscule they are. And at the end of the day, how often do you even see SCP-207 or the A7 even being obtained, excluding modded servers, admins, and the Christmas tree? I've never seen these things beyond 2 days after release from just people who wanted to test them out. Nobody actually uses them, which again, wouldn't care if there was some time being devoted into these big things. What I ask is that Northwood just not avoid these issues, because to me it seems their avoidance of them is pretty blatant, especially when instead of trying to fix SCP-096, every update they just decide to shift numbers hoping SCP-096 will finally not be broken. Even just to an extent addressing these issues would be better than just doing nothing and leaving us in the dark. At least I feel. This is a reason I wanted to leave. I do not like the prominent laziness of avoiding issues with their game, like the surface being a containment breach asset, and other things. Northwood is starting to do more and more updates, and increasing frequency more and more, which isn't a bad thing, don't get me wrong. It scares me that Northwood is going to start creating more problems that they're just going to brush over like they commonly do, leaving them to pile up. And I'm not leaving because I'm scared, by the way. I'm not trying to be misleading with that. I'm just leaving because avoiding issues. I hope to see Northwood look back over what they have looked past and fix problems with their game or revamp things so they stop being a problem. I also hope Northwood, in the future, maintains fixing problems with their game. Now, I want to take this chance to talk about the removal of the private keycard. To many, it was a confusing and unnecessary move, because to many, they weren't experiencing the issue that the few who were complaining about it were. So, to those who don't know, you may ask, why was it removed? And I'll tell you, it was because of two very avoidable and rare case scenario skill issues. Some people would be tabbed out of their game, resulting in them getting locked on surface. In other scenarios, people would run to Gate A, but not have a keycard to enter the facility, getting trapped on surface. Both of these issues are completely avoidable. First off, complaining that a multiplayer game progressed without you when you were AFK is such a bizarre thing to me. I don't understand how you could blame the game and not yourself when you were literally tabbed out. This problem isn't going to occur if you're not tabbed out, so just actually play the game? My bad, G's. Second off, why would you go separately to a gate that nobody is going to if you don't have a keycard to open that gate? Just don't do that. Problem solved. The main issue I have with this update was that it was a change in a 5-year-old solidified rule and a disrespect of lore just to appeal to a part of the community who was having this very avoidable rare case skill issue. Why is this disrespectful to lore? Well, the SCP Foundation in lore is a very organized, foundation. They have a built-in hierarchy that is built off of loyalty, trust, and skill. A captain is the highest authority to the MTF, and this is because they are the most trusted by the Foundation and skilled. Because such, they have the highest authority, access, and utilities. A private is not yet trusted enough to enter the facility and is used as a pawn. Privates serve as firepower to the facility, thus why they don't have access to it. Chaos does not have this hierarchy. You can just join their team and be accepted to have the same level of authority and firepower as everyone else. This helps Chaos be more of a threat. because each individual class holds the same amount of power. But there is also no guidance. Nobody holds a higher authority over anyone, causing them to be less organized. Private to have the same level of authority as a sergeant just waters down each class as only having a difference in utility, which isn't true. These classes are supposed to be as well divisible by authority, but are not being treated in such a way. Again, the issue that I have with this is that Northwood released an update that changed a piece of their game that was not complained about for 5 years, pushing aside a valuable part of lore that is used in their game to create a dynamic between Chaos and MTF to accommodate for a couple of people's very avoidable, rare case scenario skill issues. This is a reason why I wanted to quit. It saddens me to see Northwood appeal to this part of the community and reinforce this thought that it is not a skill issue on the player, but a problem with the game. I hope to see Northwood stand their ground and not deter from the original or current intention of their game, especially when it's to change a 5-year-old solidified aspect of their game since release to all of a sudden appeal to people who now find it a problem. SCPs is just a whole other chapter in the book of SCP Secret Laboratory. There would be so much to discuss, so much to state, that it genuinely would need its own video to address, and I'm not willing to address it in its entirety in this video. I will, however, provide some details. SCPs do not fit the role that they are supposed to. SCPs are supposed to be this class that goes against everything but themselves. In this game, SCPs are monsters. Monsters contained within a highly protected facility that holds the most dangerous of anomalies. With this setup, it would be expected that these monstrous creatures hold some sort of powerful strengths. It would be assumed in most cases when these SCPs breach containment, they are hunters, while in rare cases where a big enough defense or offense is built, the SCPs become the hunted. Yet, in experiences both as and not as SCPs, 9 times out of 10, SCPs are the ones being hunted. This even stretches to just 1v1s, where human classes have easy times evading and even killing SCPs, or at least doing a significant amount of damage before the SCP can catch up. What I expect to be the reason is because SCPs have been made weaker in some areas. 2 taps, there's probably other stuff too, but a lot of progression in this game has been made to give human classes more items to use. More weapons are and have been added, weapons have and are being reworked into stronger things, and more items are and have been added for human players to use to make them more powerful. In a lot of cases, it's easy to see a singular person have enough gear to equate or even become more powerful than SCPs. The amount of one-man armies there is now and things of that nature is astonishing. It's become such a prone strategy for me to come across, and that's because it's so effective. This leads into another issue I have, which is just SCPs aren't feared anymore, at least not to the same extent they once were. The amount of times I see SCPs being bomb rushed without care, or people going in alone, is not a small amount. People used to actually fear going against the SCPs, or at least strategize them and didn't just bomb rush them without care. Sadly, now we have people running at them alone because of the absurd loot they've cooked up in 914. As a player who has played this game since the beginning of 2022, I have watched the amount of times SCPs win decrease. I have watched the amount of times SCPs are the ones chasing people decrease. I only ever see people being chased early game, if that. And it's so extraordinarily rare to see people being chased by SCPs late game. With this, you can just not tell me that in recent times it hasn't been an objective to weaken or change SCPs so that they don't win as regularly. In the end, I think SCPs are just less of a threat than they once were. This might be due to changes with SCPs making them ultimately weaker, This might have to do with more updates contributing to reworking and expanding upon human players, or it might have to do with a mix of both. At the end of the day, I feel SCPs are weaker compared to when I started playing, and I know a lot of people who can agree. I also want to clarify, I am mostly talking about individual SCPs. I don't care about SCPs working together right now, I am talking about individual SCPs. There are also just a lot of disagreements that come with SCPs, like how they should be balanced. Some people think that SCPs should be balanced only thinking of how effective the SCP will be alone, and others think SCPs should be balanced mostly with the thought of having aid from other SCPs so as not to have a full SCP team being too overpowered. Both come with pros and cons, and boils down to what you find more acceptable and accurate. I personally think the first answer choice I provided, SCPs should be balanced only thinking of how the SCPs will be when alone, is the best, and I'll explain why. The second choice comes with the thought that the full SCP team is too overpowerful, too scary, but that's the whole point of an SCP team. People complained that a whole SCP team together was too overpowering and too overwhelming, which it was. But that came at a cost. The cost was that the SCPs controlled less of the facility and covered less ground. There was always a way to sneak around them, some other place to go. This would require the SCPs to keep moving. Also, a full SCP team together wasn't invincible. Slowly, their health degraded. I don't like this idea of forcing SCPs to have to work together to be a level of strength they should be alone. First of all, that limits strategy, being knowing when to split up and when to work together, and second of all, what's the point of being an SCP then? The whole point is that you're a marauder and supposed to go against the entire facility, and you can't even give them the tools to do so unless they constantly follow their teammates. It just doesn't fit what an SCP is supposed to be. Anyways, there is a lot more to say, more to state, but we'll be here forever with what I want to provide, so I'll end it off here. This is the last segment, and I just want to ask one last question. Is this a passion project? Now, I know that might sound dumb at first. Yes, of course it is. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things that would lead one to believe it isn't. First off, let's start off with some things that would suggest that this is a passion project. Hubert originally created this as a sole developer without the thought or intention the game would gain this much popularity. Northwood doesn't really care to fix some problems with their game, and some of their updates are just to do whatever they want to do. An example of this being, Northwood has not redesigned the Surface Zone yet, a change that was very requested by Northwood's community and Northwood itself addressed, but instead they have added joke items that nobody uses. And lastly, Northwood has some people in their company who just don't do their job. Whether it be somebody who is supposed to be monitoring servers who doesn't delist and relist servers on time, or someone who is a developer for the game and says they can't do anything about it when somebody reports that a mechanic of their game isn't functioning correctly.
CJ Blasts, a good friend of mine, he wanted to report a bug where the flashbang just always showed a hit marker even if it hit nothing, which is funny because that was the only useful change they added, and even that didn't work properly. And the guy whose job it is to take bug reports and show them to the devs at first claimed that it was a new addition and not a bug. So we thought he misunderstood us, common mistake, whatever. So we said, no, you see, it goes off even if it hit nothing. And his next words were, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You work at Northwood. CJ continued to try and explain it, only for him to say, not much I can do about it. Like, what? It's your job. The fuck do you mean? What do you mean you can't do anything about it? It's your job.
This all gives off the impression that Northwood is just doing whatever they want with their game because it's a passion project, and they treat it no greater, and hold it to no greater standard. But what are some things that would suggest otherwise? What is suggesting that this isn't a passion project? Well, first off, Northwood with their Mimicry update removed signature and unique things from their game, such as an RGB tear from the grenades, as well as removing the blooms from light sources. These were all changed to more modern effects. Secondly, Northwood changed some achievements from being a funny little reward to achieved after you die accidentally, being new to the game, into something that just feels less rewarding. They also changed the funny, easygoing names they had for achievements into these corporate, serious names. Lastly, they literally made a company. Need I say more? These updates give off the impression that Northwood is treating their game seriously and holding it to a standard higher than just a passion project. Now, at the end of the day, yes, I know this is a passion project. I just think it's a shame that Northwood starts to take themselves seriously in specific areas like achievements, changing achievements that are rewarded from dying in funny ways to achievements that are rewarded from doing menial tasks, and some that are just weird. And in addition, changing easygoing funny names to more serious ones. But they don't take themselves seriously when there are big problems with their game worth addressing, and they would instead rather add a joke item that nobody is going to use. And also the fact that some people in the company just don't do their job, which I feel like I have the right to say from experiences I've seen and experiences I've experienced firsthand. Yes, this is a reason why I wanted to quit. The death achievements used to give off the vibe that this game was funny and not meant to be taken seriously. Taking that away and making these achievements weird, all in the name of being more corporate, yet not really treating themselves corporate with other stuff they arguably should be, I just don't like it. I hope to see Northwood re-implement the funny, easygoing achievements, but also to take themselves seriously in places they should be taking themselves seriously, like fixing problems with their game. Now, I hope I effectively stated some of my concerns and distastes for this game, as well as provided some valuable suggestions for Northwood to use. At the end of the day, I am grateful for the friends I have gained from this experience and the communities I have become a part of, and truly appreciate the experiences I've had with this game. Let it be known that I have no hate for Northwood. There is distaste, discomfort, and lack of support for certain directions Northwood is going in and decisions Northwood is making, but no hate. I wish the best for this game and hope to see it do well and fix itself.
Now, I want to say, when I recorded the audio for this initially, I actually changed the very end of the script to remove me from promising future involvement of this game, as I actually did want to quit, even after I decided not to. From what I was receiving, I was holding on to something that just wasn't there, and I thought I should finally let go. As of until recently, good and promising things have been happening with the Plague-House, and it seems it might have a bright future. So as long as the server is in session, or Northwood doesn't do a bizarrely bad change, I'm proud to announce future involvement with Northwood. I hope to continue to try and provide ideas and solutions for the game, as well as point out problems a lot of people are turning a blind eye to. See you soon, and hope you have a nice day.